What's up, fight fans? This is Danny Howard from FightHype.com, and this is the Pillar to Post video podcast. Got a lot of stuff for you this week, so let's get started. So the talk is now all about Pacquiao Marquez 4 happening in November 10th at Cowboy Stadium. That announcement should be coming shortly, as I believe that Marquez probably got the paperwork for that fight before the Pacquiao-Bradley fight, and I know that Bob Arum has been telling Manny Pacquiao since last November that this fight, Marquez 4, is a fight that he had to take. Now, Timothy Bradley is a fighter that has relatively been quiet about his future plans. Now, Bradley is drawing the ire of the press, the fans, and the media, for really all the wrong reasons. Timothy Bradley didn't pay off the judges. Timothy Bradley didn't score the fight for himself, but he was on the wrong end. The right end of a wrong decision. So Bradley, regardless whether you want to call him the champion, the paper champion, or the non-champion, he has the belt, and his next fight should command considerable interest. Now, looking at Top Rank Stable, there are a few possibilities for Timothy Bradley. One of them being Filipino Mark Melijan at 147 pounds. Melijan is not that good of a fighter, but for Bradley to capitalize on the I Beat Manny Pacquiao card, he could beat another Filipino fighter, perhaps fanning the flames of interest for a Pacquiao-Bradley 2 rematch that will never happen. Another option is for him to face off against Mauricio Herrera, who was supposed to fight Brandon Rios July 7th on the undercard of Nonito Donaire versus Jeremy Mabuthala, but Rios pulled out for one reason or another, depending on the stories you like to believe. But I would actually like to see Tim Bradley's first fight against Mike Alvarado. If I had to pick anybody for Bradley to fight next in his first title defense, I would love to see a Timothy Bradley-Mike Alvarado fight. Alvarado has done more than enough to deserve this opportunity to fight for a major belt. His win over Herrera, which was on the undercard of Rios Abril, was very, very impressive. He's undefeated, he's gaining popularity, and he's a guy that comes to fight. I think that that's the kind of fight that might help dull in the sting for Timothy Bradley. A good performance against a young up-and-coming fighter such as him is a tough fight. It is not an easy fight, but it definitely will help Bradley in terms of, I guess, washing away the stink from that decision. Because even though Tim Bradley may not deserve to have that title, he is the champion, and I can't blame him if he takes this fight against Herrera or Alvarado. Those are both good fights. I would prefer Alvarado though. But I do expect Timothy Bradley to come back towards the end of the year for one of those fights once his his, I think, overplayed injury to his left or right foot, or both feet, I guess, heals up. So we'll have to stay tuned for what's going to be happening next with Timothy Bradley, but I do believe that Bradley is going to be back in the ring by the end of the year, presumably against either Mauricio Herrera or possibly Mike Alvarado. Now, anyone who's been following me knows that I'm not the biggest fan of Brandon Rios. I don't like the fact that Brandon poked fun at Freddie Roach's Parkinson's disease. I found that very distasteful and offensive. I also don't like the fact that Brandon, consistently misses weight. Very unprofessional of him. Regardless of that, though, this latest development with Brandon Rios pulling out of his fight with Mauricio Herrera on the July 7th HBO card, there's stories on both sides, but it's really, really hard to pick which one is the truth. Now, Rios' camp is saying that he suffered from tendonitis of the elbow, and that, being that it's that close to fight time, will be unfit to train for the fight. Now, that could be possible. Anything can happen in boxing. I mean, injuries are common. So there is a lot of people who have told me that Brandon, when they saw him a couple weekends ago, he was in good spirits. He looked like he was, very much looking forward to this fight and all that. Now, reports are surfacing as well, just as frequently as those were, that Brandon was nowhere near fight weight. And Brandon was going to be taking this fight at 141 pounds. Not 140 pounds, but 141 pounds. Being that Brandon missed weight at lightweight for his past 2 fights. And now this fight with Herrera was supposed to not only take place at the junior welterweight limit, but it was supposed to be that +1, so that it would be guaranteed that Brandon would make the weight. Now, whether it is that Brandon is legitimately injured, or that he just is not in any shape whatsoever to get this fight, I tend to believe both. I think that it's just as likely that Brandon, is not in shape for this fight as he is that he probably was injured. It's just citing Brandon's history of missing weight. Well, I don't know what this means for the long-term development of Brandon Rios. Top Rank obviously wants to make him like a Fernando Vargas type fighter where, he's like a real Mexican fighter where he has the bad boy attitude of like Fernando Vargas, Antonio Margarito. The problem is, though, is that Brandon might find himself in a situation where he's too big for the only weight class he might be effective in. At lightweight, he was a monster. His size allowed him to absorb shots from hard-hitting opponents and walk them down subsequently. His size was just the saving grace for him at 135 pounds. At 140 pounds, he'll be fighting guys who are bigger than him or at least the same size. However, they're going to be more comfortable at that weight, they'll hit harder than the lightweights do, and they'll have better speed. Brandon, if he can't make 141 pounds, by virtue will end up at welterweight, where he will probably be undersized against much bigger fighters. It kind of reminds me of the situation that befell the late Diego Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo. They were too big for lightweight. They couldn't make it at that weight class anymore. And when they moved up to welterweight, they found themselves way out of their league against much bigger opponents, and they were unable to recapture the success they had at the lighter weight classes. Now, I'm not too sure if this is the fate that will befall on Brandon Rios. I'm sure that the next fight they will do will be at the junior welterweight limit, but it's tough to say where he goes from here. I would hope that Brandon can make the weight next time he fights, or he can, consistently make weight at 140 pounds as opposed to what happened to lightweight. He's an exciting fighter. He's good for boxing, my personal opinion aside. But at the same time, if he's not putting in the work to get himself in shape, he's going to have a very, very short and very disappointing career. So we'll have to see what happens next. Ironically, Top Rank is replacing Rios with another troubled past experiment with Kelly Pavlik on the undercard, taking the place of Brandon Rios. So from a guy that probably likes to eat too much and doesn't like to train, is a guy who gets into fights with the trainers and likes to drink. So, I guess you guys can draw the parallels there, but I can only hope that Brandon Rios can right his ship soon, because I know he has a lot of fans, and hey, I can't hate on that. That brings fans to the sport. So hopefully we see Brandon in the ring soon. So while we won't be getting Andre Berto versus Victor Ortiz 2 this weekend, we will be getting Victor Ortiz in the ring against Josecito Lopez. Now, what I'm more excited for is the fact that we still get the co-feature, which is the fight I'm really looking forward to, in Lucas Matisse versus Humberto Soto in a junior welterweight clash. Now, I think Lucas Matisse is one of the top fighters at 140 pounds. He has boxing acumen, speed, very good power. And the 2 losses on his career, I think, were both very poorly judged hometown decisions that went in the favor of Zab Judah and Devin Alexander when he fought them. I think that Soto is probably the best opponent, or at least the most accomplished opponent in terms of alphabet belts and fight, I guess, longevity that Matisse has fought. But I've seen Humberto Soto struggle against far lesser fighters, And I've seen at least the guys that Lucas Matisse has lost to controversially have gone on to win major titles and still have, you know, a reasonable continuing career. This should be a very exciting fight. I think there's going to be a lot of competitive rounds and where, you know, these guys are going to swap leather with each other. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, what will happen is that Lucas Matisse is just going to have too much firepower for Humberto Soto, who, you know, who's always been in the ring against guys that are 2 classes below. But I think this is one of the cases where he's going to be against the guy who's 1 class above. I'll take Matisse in this fight by late stoppage. Now, in the main event, Victor Ortiz versus Josecito Lopez. You know, Josecito Lopez, while he's a very, very big underdog, does have the right kind of style to frustrate Ortiz and to take confidence out of him, which is the key for Victor to win anyways, to be confident of himself. But the pressure that Lopez will bring is probably nothing that Victor hasn't seen already. He doesn't have the hellacious power of a Marcos Maidana, or the versatility of a Lamont Peterson, or the overall skill set of a Floyd Mayweather. So I think that Victor is going to taste Josecito's power early. He's going to like what he sees. He knows that he's not going to hurt him. And Victor's going to dominate Lopez from beginning to end. Lopez isn't a bad fighter, but Ortiz has been in the ring with much better competition over the past couple of years. Lopez just came off of a very close loss to Jesse Vargas last September. And Jesse Vargas isn't even the same level of fighter as Victor Ortiz. So I believe Ortiz will outclass Lopez in what should be a fun fight, but when it gets to round 5 or 6, we should already know that this fight's going to be over. So Victor Ortiz will win this fight by unanimous decision, setting up his September execution at the hands of Saul Canelo Alvarez. Alright guys, that about does it for me this week. So if you have any comments, please leave them below, and be sure to hit like and subscribe so you can get your future updates. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at dbhoward126. You can add me as a friend on Facebook, or if you need to contact me directly, you can email me at dhoward@fighthype.com. Also be sure to dial it into Fight Hype every week. Fight Hype's your #1 source for boxing and MMA news. And if any of you guys are going to be in LA this weekend for the fight, just let me know. I'd like to meet up with some of y'all. Well, in that case, I'll see you guys at the fights, and have a good one.